All right, everybody. Thank you for joining us this evening, and apologies for missing out last week. I had a couple things go a little haywire at the last minute, and I had to address them. So we'll just play catch up this week. I hope everyone's doing well. Um, at the risk of sounding a little cliche, I'm gonna do something I rarely ever do, and that's tell people to do something. If you've got folks in your life who you love and care about, make sure that they know it. Um, my sister passed away this morning. Tiffany Graham, one of the kindest and most humble, genuinely loving people I have ever known. Um, she was my oldest sister. She so we're a blended family. So mom had two kids, Tiffany and Jeremy, when she met dad, and dad had a daughter, Erica, and then mom and dad had Tyler and I. So at a time there were quite a few of us in the house. So Tiffany was about 10 years older than me, and uh, she she really was. I mean, this I know we always try to avoid speaking ill of the dead, but this is not an exaggeration. I don't think I've ever known anybody that has as much kindness and forgiveness in her heart as my sister did. So, fortunately, we had a good relationship and we would talk from time to time. We were both kind of busy with our own lives, but we always saw each other at holidays and kind of in between and things like that. And she was really enjoying being a grandmother. Her daughter Grace uh, has two girls, and we we know for a fact that they were her world. So please put out good thoughts for the family, and we'll just stick together and we'll just take it from here. Um, I'm really, it's just tough. It's tough when there's young people involved, and it's tough when parents shouldn't have to lay their kids to rest, um, like my mom and dad are going to have to do. So, it's just one of those things where don't try not to run out the door quite so fast. Make sure you hug your kids and your wives and your husbands and your girlfriends, boyfriends, and all that good stuff, and just make sure people know. And that's what makes, when this kind of thing happens, this is what makes it easier. Is that if there was never any wondering, it does make the grief somewhat easier to handle. So um, that's one of those rare moments where I'm gonna tell you guys to go do something. So you do it. Come back to the chat later. That's fine. I don't care. So, thank you, Digger, Pip, and Eyes. One step closer. Thank you guys for coming in, and we're just going to kind of keep rolling on from here. But I felt like that needed to be said and acknowledged, and I'll be sure to share some stories and some photos of her in the coming days as we go through pictures and do stuff to work on memorializing her. She was a wonderful lady. Um, so since we missed last week, I kind of hit some notes and to catch us up here on the homestead because I went and added animals somewhat unplanned. So I did I did something I try not to do, but I had a one of my earliest customers contact me and say that they needed to rehome some rabbits and some laying hens due to dealing with some illness in the family. So I agreed. I was honored that they reached out to me. So I picked up a rabbit hutch off of Facebook Marketplace and a couple of used but serviceable small mobile shelters, rabbit tractors, and we had more or less the bones of a PVC style chicken enclosure, like a daytime chicken enclosure for ranging them across the pastures. So I kind of whipped it into high gear, had a couple friends come out to help me, and we got that assembled. So naturally, this happens. I go pick these animals up while Angel was out of town. So this was 2 weeks ago now. Angel was out of town visiting her family in Ohio. So I was kind of running a one-man show up here with all these sheep, and then suddenly 14 rabbits and 9 chickens. So I have studied rabbits off and on, know a lot of people who raise them, have talked to a lot of people, and just never really quite felt like I really needed to pull the trigger on them. But we realized it really makes sense for us. It's not like space is an issue out here. It makes sense to bring them in for fertility reasons. And our dog Trip, we already feed her raw. We feed her raw chicken backs and chicken organs from our meat co-op, but it's not stuff that we raise. It's stuff that we purchase. We purchase it, basically for processor cost, so it's very affordable. But really, it makes much more sense to just raise some rabbits. So here we are. Now let's see, 14 rabbits. When I picked them up, I was not going to be able to exactly duplicate the setup that they had. They did have some animals separated. It kind of seemed like they had sort of like 2 different colonies with, kind of the male-female ratios worked out. But I was going to have to put everybody in one hutch for a short amount of time until I could get the tractors in service. And within 2 days, there were a litter of kits. I didn't know anything about these rabbits. The folks were not really able to provide much information, so I was just going to have to figure it out on the fly. So all of a sudden, I've got a litter of kits being unfortunately trampled by multiple adult rabbits. So I quickly separated everybody, kind of walled off one side of the hutch so that I could isolate the mother. After I figured out who the mother was, that was fun. We'll get to that in a second. But got everybody kind of separated, squared away, so we were not having carnage with the rabbits. So I called my buddy Josh, who has been raising rabbits for quite some time. He's kind of my local rabbit mentor. And I was like, shit, dude, this rabbit has had kits. Like, what's my quick, what do I need to do? Like, right freaking now. And he said, get a cardboard box, cut out one side of it, throw some hay in it, put them all in there. Because they were on the wire. This is not even less than ideal. This is very bad. This is very bad, very not appropriate for this situation. So I got the box, got the hay and all that stuff in it, put all the kits in it. I think there were 6. And I then began to investigate of the 7 females who they belong to. If you don't know, mother rabbits don't really stick with their young all the time. They jump in, they nurse them, they jump back out again. So here I was working on upending all the rabbits and trying to confirm first, what sex rabbit I had. And then for the females, who could possibly be the mother. And after YouTube, depending on how YouTube listens to this, we may get a strike. But after, how do I put this? Feeling the undersides of rabbits, their bellies, I was able to determine who was in milk. And so that was the rabbit that we decided was Mama Rabbit. I put her in there, and it turned out that I was correct. We split everybody up between the other side of the hutch and the tractors, and that was a much more sustainable situation. Never intended to keep all these rabbits to begin with. It was the plan that I was going to work on rehoming them, but it just turns out that I had to do that a little quickly than I initially planned. So as of yesterday, where I went out and spent the day with some folks at the Living Free in Tennessee Spring Workshop, most of those rabbits have been rehomed. So I decided to keep Obviously, the mother and her kits, and then a couple of days later, another female had kits, got her set up, and then I decided to retain a third female as a kind of backup rabbit. I also decided to keep two males. When I talked to Josh about it, he was like, "Yeah," he said there was a time, I only kept one male, but then he died unexpectedly, so you're kind of looking for another male at that point. So I decided to keep the two males that were least squirrely when I picked them up, and just kind of had like the best body condition. So they were, and I picked one that was clearly older and one that was clearly younger. I should say, back this up about a week. Between the first litter of kits and the second litter, my friends Stevie and Aaron came up here, and Aaron and I were flipping rabbits over and assessing genitalia to be absolutely sure. And the very adult males are easy, it's obvious. But when they're young, it's harder. So if anybody talks to you about tacos and donuts in referral to rabbits, that is the kind of the shape that you're looking for when it comes to rabbit parts. Females have something that looks more like a taco, and the males have something that looks more like a donut. And then, of course, when the males are very big, they have obvious testes. So we got everybody squared away. And then yesterday, everybody else is going to new homes in respective areas. Actually, kind of far. I think some are going back to New Hampshire and some are going to Texas. So, but that's all good. I really had no need to be running and feeding that many rabbits. There's just the rabbit math just didn't make sense. The feed to weight ratio and all that kind of stuff. So I feel like I've kind of got my feet under me more now with the rabbits. And since everybody got a new home, I now have the two females with litters in the big hutch. I built a smaller hutch for the third female, and the two males are in one of the small mobile tractors. So now, because I expect that third female has been bred, so I'm going to let her have her litter. So I'm just going to wait a month. That'll tell me yes or no. Wait a month, see how she does, and then I'll know what kind of breeding cycle we're on. So let's see. After a month, I will I'll kind of need to do some documentation and see, because also, as I understand it, a lot of times the males will become infertile once the weather gets hot. So we'll have to see if we're within that window. And so Tim, Pippin, whoever knows about rabbits, feel free to let me know about the whole when it's hot, they don't breed kind of thing. I mean, it's not like this is an emergency. I don't need to have a ton of rabbit production just yet. I'm fine kind of figuring everything out. So we'll just kind of play that by ear, but I've got everybody arranged, which is nice. I've got setups where I'm collecting all of their manure underneath. That was a big part of it. I wanted it for my fertility program up here. And while they are getting fermented feed from alfalfa pellets, I've also been feeding them all kinds of weeds, grass from the garden, of course, whatever they eat when they're in the tractors. So I bring them handfuls of stuff at least 2 times a day. So they're getting mixed forage. And ideally, I will get them mostly, at least through the, spring, summer, and fall, get them on fresh foods and reduce the pellets. A 50-pound bag from Rural King is about $20. So, of course, I'll be going through less of it now, so I am going to work the numbers and just make sure what I'm doing makes sense from a financial standpoint. Even if it's kind of more like a break-even thing, I think the manure is probably worth it. I need, frankly, as much manure as I can get my hands on to work on this fertility and pasture restoration program. So in relation to that, I am taking, I clean out the collections, the poop collections for the rabbits every couple of days, and I've started mixing it with leaf matter, grass clippings, things of that nature, and actually just spreading it directly on pasture that the sheep have just been through. So we've got a lot of places in the pasture that are bare or close to bare, and so I'm just working on covering covering bare ground to give anything that's in the seed bank a chance to grow. So, but aside from a little bit of the hairiness of early rabbit antics, we've pretty much hit our stride now. I've got kind of my morning and evening rabbit routine worked out in terms of their care. I made some good waterers that seem to be working well. They're actually the poultry watering cups, but the rabbits use them. We're not wasting water, and I just fitted them on gallon jugs, cut a kind of a larger opening in the top of the jug, and I can just easily fill them from a hose where they're at. So it's coming along. It's coming along. Let me catch up with the comments here for just a minute. Tim says, haven't had the heat issue making my males sterile, but that being said, I haven't tried to mate them when it's 100 plus. Well, hopefully we don't get 100 plus around here. Mid 80s to low 90s is kind of what we hit here in Tennessee. So we'll see. We shall see. I do know here, just by observing, the wild rabbits, there is absolutely, without a doubt, a flush of baby rabbits this time of year. They're everywhere right now. I mean, you practically trip over them when you go out in the fields. And then I don't see baby rabbits for most of the summer. I see smaller and then adult rabbits, and then I see another round of baby rabbits in the fall. So with that observation, we'll kind of see. Plus, it's my understanding that rabbits, they don't have trouble with the cold, but they can have trouble with the heat. So one of the tactics I went with was putting both the hutches, on the eastern side of my shop, so they get early sun to noon-ish sun, and then the rest of the day that's in the shade, and it's actually the coolest spot within the zone 1. It's the coolest spot we've got. So I'm hoping that will help them out. I also have the ability to, put a fan on them. I've got one hutch in front of a window, so I can actually put a fan inside in the shop, open the window, and put some air on them. There's people who will put ice packs in there, and I actually keep a lot of the kind of ice packs that come with medication shipments. I keep some of those on hand. I stack them in the freezer in case the freezer ever failed. We've got extra mass in there, so I can use those too. So we've got a few things that we can do when we inevitably hit that really hot streak. Jeremy's got a meat animal calculator. By all means, yeah, send it to me. I'm happy to look at stuff like that. I usually just kind of plug in some rough numbers, but we're kind of getting to the point where it makes sense to really know and not estimate quite so much. Tim says, rabbit keeping information, the Rabbitry Center on YouTube. Awesome. And we are maybe talking about a rabbit harvesting class, and for the fall gathering that we'll do for SRF / Delinquents Gully, Tim Cook's property. We could arrange something like that. We're also talking about doing a foraging walk out there in Tim's property. I want to do quite a bit of prep work and give you guys a really good class out there. So yeah, keep in touch on all that, because it'll be here before you know it, for sure. So of course we also got some chickens, and I had ordered some, what I thought was like a heavy duty coated netting for the shelter. And this is basically just to keep the hawks and the owls and the fox is kind of the three big ones around here from snatching chickens. So this is like a 15 by 20 PVC dome shelter that's lightweight, that's easy to pull. And inside of the shelter, we've got like a little coop that Angel built onto a little platform that we can tow. And so we just kind of move the coop a little bit, and then we move the shelter, move the coop a little bit, move the shelter. And that way we're not trying to move one massive heavy thing. Of all the iterations we've tried, this is probably the best. And the coop itself is a little bit of the kind of like the rickshaw design, the chickshaw design that Justin Rhodes has. It's a very, very scaled down version of that. So, but the netting I got, Amazon lied, surprise. It was shit, to be frank. It was, I couldn't even get it out of the package without it tearing and ripping. So I was trying to very carefully put this stuff on, and it was just junk. And as soon as a bird, I don't think they could see it really well, so a bird ran into it, and then she panicked and flapped her wings and tore it and got out and finally got her rounded back up again. So it was junk, and I felt like that was just not going to be the way to go. So I kind of went back to the drawing board on what we were going to use to cover this shelter. And actually, what, I don't know why it didn't occur to me before, but what I went out and got, I went down to Harbor Freight and got shade cloth tarp. So it's vented for like covering. Use this to cover your trees and plants and shrubs and stuff when you're transporting them, or you can hang it under a clear awning. But it's heavy duty and it's got grommets. So I put those on a few days ago. It was a little more than I really wanted to spend on this project, but it needed to be done. So it is covered. It is secure. So far, this has not turned into a giant sail in the wind. There may be times that I'm going to need to stake it down. The wind is always a factor up here, sometimes more than anything else. And but you know, it doubles as, of course, with some extra shade, they should be a little bit more comfortable. So they've got they've got their coop, which is the platform it's on. They can get under it if they want to. Plus, it casts shade itself, and then the shade cloth too will kind of help mitigate that. So they seem to be pretty happy under there, and they're getting moved twice a day. Everybody's laying eggs. We're getting 5 or 6 eggs a day, and they're looking pretty good. I do want to use them more for composting, but I'm still figuring out how that's going to look. I don't know if I'm going to maybe split them up and use part of the flock for moving around the pastures to work through the sheep and donkey poo. That's kind of their function at the moment. I'm kind of zigzagging them through the field after the sheep have been in there, because chickens can help you break a parasite cycle. So we're working on that. This is this is less than 2 weeks here, so we're still kind of working out the pattern and all. But I think definitely the shade tarp is the way to go. So think about that. If you're doing something similar, consider it. They're about $40 a piece for a 10 by 12 at Harbor Freight, and they had one that was a 12 by 20. So that actually covered one entire side, and then I used 2 more to cover the long side. And then I had, for the ends, I had some screening for a screen porch, which was pretty heavy duty, and I attached that. So so far so good. No chicken escaping, no issues with predators, and we've already seen the fox, so we know he's out here. Like the day the chickens showed up, even though they were in this super heavy duty tractor that I had kind of on standby, fully enclosed with hardware cloth, that it's like they just instantly know when chickens have come back onto the farm. So that's those guys or girls. They're I think they're Araucana, and maybe a couple of them are black Australorps are my best guess if I were to go back to my chicken breeds. So they are busily getting reacquainted with being on grass. The run that they were in was basically just soil, was just dirt. So it was kind of funny to watch them start to rediscover. Like one of them caught a grasshopper, and she was so happy. And she was so happy and pleased with herself. She wasn't even really trying to eat it. She was just parading around the perimeter with this grasshopper in her beak. So she did good, and I'm glad to have chickens back out here. I'm glad to have the fresh eggs and another way to process waste, to process compost. So we'll see if they start remembering how to scratch, because it's hilarious, but they don't really scratch very much. And maybe some breeds just don't, but I think it's maybe because they didn't have a lot to scratch through at their former home. So I'm sure it'll kick in when they discover in that little bird brain that sometimes when you scratch, you find cool stuff. So they're doing well. We've also added lamb number 10. Yes, lamb number 10 completely surprised me. I had just moved them into a new pasture and I was doing a head count and I kept coming up with an extra. And I just figured I was counting somebody twice. It's hard to count sheep that won't stand still. And then I looked again because it's a pretty big lamb. It's a pretty big lamb. And I was like, I don't remember having one of that color. So I waited. We've got a lot of black and white ones, but this one was all black, but with a white face, white on the tip of her tail, and white on the lower half of her back legs. And I went inside. I saw who she was nursing off of, noted that which number sheep that was, number 22. Went inside and pulled out the book and asked Angel, I said, has 22 had a lamb? And we didn't have it noted down. So she had. She had a lamb. It could have been that morning. I moved them in the afternoon. No idea. Didn't notice. It's just really something how they just like wham. They just drop on the ground and they just go. You know, if that lamb's moving around, everything's fine. It's just that simple. So, they're doing good. They've actually already made a full circuit, well, more or less, around Dad's barn. They've been in the hops yard for a short bit, and they are now below our cabin. So they're in the southeast field at this moment. And they are real happy with this particular spot because there's so much more variety in it. There's just all kinds of, weeds and forbs and other grasses as well. So they're doing well. Probably by Sunday, I'm going to jump them. Maybe Sunday, Monday. We've got to see. We've had a lot of rain, so the grass is growing good. I will take them across the driveway, and then we're going to observe how much we want at some point put them back in the hops yard in a test corner and see how they do once the vines have been trained. So it's actually a traditional thing overseas to use sheep to manage your hops yard. So we're going to do that, but we need to make sure that they're not going to break sheep rules and eat the vines off from the ground. They will eat them when they're tender. Apparently they are less likely to eat them when they are coarser and more fibrous and beginning to climb. I think it's like over 7 feet. So it may be a little bit before we get them up in there, but even if we can get them in there like one time before harvest and have them really knock back the Johnson grass and the pokeweed and all this stuff that comes up that normally we have to manually remove, that would be really nice. So this is just very much like a wait and see and observe kind of thing with this particular use of the sheep. And yeah, we did have a bonus lamb, and I checked the notes, and we actually still have 2 sheep who have not lambed. So we're just gonna keep an eye out. I mean, I'm assuming they're bred. It's funny because they don't always. I guess I'm obviously still learning, but they just don't always look pregnant to me. Like I really didn't. I wasn't sure that 22 was bred, but there was a lamb, and a really good size one at that. And she doesn't look any different. So it's like, where do they put it? It's like, you had this thing that looked like it was, I don't know, 15 pounds inside of you, and you let it out, and you look exactly the same, except now you have a full udder. So I don't know, but I'm really enjoying having the babies, having all these lambs and sheep out here. And as long as I am not getting behind on things where I'm having to scramble to get their next fence up, that's been kind of the way to go. So I'm trying to hit my stride where I know, okay, by this date, I need to have the fence ready. And since we're getting good rain, I'm kind of able to tell more when the grass is going to be ready and when it's time to pull them off of their current lot. That makes it a little bit easier. So there's of course, many schools of thought about rotational grazing, strip grazing, mob grazing, all these different things. And so far, I have decided with the way we've already kind of got these sort of predetermined paddocks just by the way the land is shaped, by the way the access is across the land, where it just makes sense to take them in a particular manner. Now, I could take these particular paddocks, all of which probably range anywhere from a fifth of an acre to maybe more like a quarter of an acre to a full acre ish. I could divide it up further and do a big perimeter fence and then do cuts and keep them in for a day, take the center fence down, move them over, so forth. And because you can control how they eat a little bit better. If I was here full time and I never had to go off site to travel for a consult or to be on site at an installation job, I would probably do that. But right now, it just still makes sense to put them in a bigger paddock for 3 to 4 days when the grass is growing. And then that gives me time to figure out, okay, I need to have this next paddock ready by this date because I know I'm going to be here. I know I'm going to have time to do it, that kind of thing. And go from there. I am sure as I do this longer, I'm going to refine things. But right now we're operating slightly above good enough with, not ideal being, of course, never moving them. That would be the worst. That's not going to be a thing. More ideal would be smaller strips of grazing move more frequently. So we're kind of hitting that middle ground right now. With the idea being that we're not returning to pasture that has been grazed for about 3 weeks or longer. And right now, this time of year, I can definitely go longer. That gives opportunity for a parasite to die off, especially if I've got the chickens in there working it too, before it can reinfect an animal. So it's a lot to take into account. It's a lot to think about. So, but we're just going to keep trucking and do the best we can. I mentioned that I was at the Living Free in Tennessee workshop yesterday. Initially, I was planning to be able to spend the whole time out there, Wednesday through Sunday. But there's just too many, and this is, of course, this was before we got the news about Tiffany this morning. There's just too many things happening here at home right now that need my attention. I just can't be away. So, but I was committed to having a wild plant walk and a foraging class yesterday. So I got out there about lunchtime, had lunch with everybody, caught up with many of my friends. This year actually is a little more of like a reunion year, kind of a lot of the alumni, as it were, and a few new people, but mostly my friends. Mostly my friends were there, all the good folks. And so we had lunch, enjoyed some sessions from Hog-Eye Harry and Jenny Hill, Porterhouse, some soap making demos, foraging with Patrick Rorman, things like that. So we all hung out, had dinner together too, and I stayed till about 8 o'clock. Foraging class was a lot of fun. We basically just walked alongside Nicole's Road for about a quarter mile or so, just because that strip alone, there's all kinds of stuff to be shown. And really, I mean, we could probably be out there for 3 days and not barely scratch the surface, especially this time of year. So I try to hit the things that a lot of people are going to find anywhere, especially in the eastern United States, things that are generally not easily confused with anything that can be poisonous or otherwise irritating, and things that have multiple uses in terms of both medicine and food. So we had a really good time. That was well attended. Always get a lot of good questions. We had fun with it. Found some kind of cool trumpet vine that I haven't seen out there before. Couldn't figure out exactly which one it was. Couldn't even find it in the book I had with me. But yeah, Tennessee, Middle Tennessee is it's just beautiful right now. It's just I love this time of year when just everything is awake and everything is just starting to bloom. So we had a good time, and I got home about 11 o'clock last night. So um, that's more or less the highlights. The highlights for the last couple of weeks. I planted a bunch of fruit trees for a customer last week. I've got more work to do for her. Got a couple of consults on the books. Going to be out in the Camden area around the second week of May. Let me think here. Off-grid ping. I don't know if you're in the chat tonight, but if you hear this later, I am going to be out there. I'm going to try to get over to Toolman Tim's property, so I will catch up with you. I will reach out to you personally, and we'll make a plan to talk about some stuff if you're up for it. So, yeah, we're in full swing, and I'm trying to stay on top of things and keep a good positive attitude. I will admit I have had some stresses that needed to be handled. Mostly feeling overwhelmed. I can kind of accidentally easily let myself get overwhelmed and have to kind of do this manual reset of sorts. I was real happy when Angel got home. Life is much easier when she is here with me. She does a lot, and it's readily apparent how much she does when she's not around. So Pippin's going to try to sprout some key lime seeds this weekend. Cool. My brother actually just showed me his. He's got a little lime shrub that he keeps potted. Brings it in the wintertime, and it's super happy to be outside right now. The flowers that we're growing for my friend Aaron, who's getting married on May 1st, we are getting blooms. Not sure how much in terms of enough for a whole bunch of decoration, but I think we'll be able to dress up some tables and probably at least supplement a bouquet for her. They're looking really good. We were kind of scrambling to come up with annual flowers that would be ready by May 1st, especially trying to get them started as seeds and then through all of our wild weather swings that we experience at the end of winter and early spring. But we're looking forward to celebrating with them in a few days. She and her soon-to-be husband, Stevie, are some of my very favorite quality people. Just absolute wonderful, wonderful people. And, between being, I think catching up with folks yesterday because I was going to be at the workshop for such a short amount of time, it was kind of extra nice because it was, we made sure to get in like some good quality conversations and interactions before I had to head back out because we couldn't stretch it out over this entire weekend. So in some ways, I think I maybe even appreciated it a little bit more. And you guys be sure to tune in. Of course, all these are being live streamed. All these presentations from LFTN are being live streamed, and they'll be up on Nicole's channel. Jenny Hill tells her story of dealing with cancer, and despite all those challenges, still building the kind of life that she wants to be living. So, yeah, that's what I'm just here to encourage you guys to do too. If I can help you in any way, you guys know how to find me. I'm gonna go ahead and wind it up here because I think I'm gonna go down the road and fetch us a little bit of cheap food, and maybe just try to veg out with some old school Star Trek or something for a little bit, so we can kind of get a little bit of an emotional break today. So. Thank you guys very much for tuning in and hanging out with me. Go take care of your people, and we'll talk to you next time.